Hey guys, welcome to the video, Salt here. Today we're going to be going over the melee weapon, the Furax Wraith Incarnon. But before we start, let's go over our commenter board. The first commenter of the last video is Jeevan Justin 1305, and the top commenter of the last video is Bards98. And then we have our recent channel supporters here of Whoop-De-Wham, Nice Bear, and Colonel 06. Thank you so much for your support. Unique and interesting things about the Furax Wraith is that it gets 20 initial combo count. It also has a special amalgam mod for it that we'll go over after. And when you're in Incarnon form, you get 100% melee damage, 25% sprint speed, 25% parkour velocity, and your heavy slams have 90% efficiency. Also, your heavy slams will leave behind a 5-meter pool of heat damage, and that will be doing status at a 50% status chance. Okay, there's two more things I want to go over for the Furax Wraith before we go over the build. And the first thing is its amalgam mod that it gets. So it gets amalgam Furax body count. This is plus 15 seconds of combo duration and plus 45% fire rate to secondary weapons. So all you have to have is the Furax Wraith on your build with this amalgam mod on, and your secondary weapons now have a 45% fire rate buff, which is really friggin' strong. And that's why the Furax Wraith is actually the best in slot melee weapon for Warframes that use secondary weapons as their primary damage source. It's just a really cool thing that this weapon can do, is it can act like a stat stick for those kind of builds. Now, the other part of this mod here where it says melee kills blast and stagger enemies in 15 meters, that's nice. The blast is stuck though at doing 1 damage. So this is more of a stagger CC effect, that bottom part there. The second thing I wanted to go over with the Furax Wraith is regarding its heat pools that it leaves behind on heavy slams in the Incarnon form. Now, these heat pools, the damage is going to scale off of elemental mods, melee damage mods, and faction damage mods. But don't get too excited because the damage on these are completely garbage. I made a second build where I just had elemental mods, melee damage mods, and a faction mod on, and it was still complete garbage tier damage. So you can't think of these heat pools as a form of good damage. Think of them more as a form of status procking. Now, when we talk about status procking, there's an issue there as well. Well, it's an issue or a good thing, depending on how you look at it. But the heat pools, that heat will actually mix with elements that you have on the weapon. So when I was first building out the Furax Wraith, I had initially built it out as a melee influence build, and melee influence uses electric. And electric was mixing with the heat, and instead of leaving a heat pool behind, it was leaving a radiation pool behind. And radiation is a super janky element that a lot of times acts like a damage decrease. And it's because most of the time you want enemies to come to you to get more damage and more kills. Well, with radiation, they stay in other tile sets fighting each other. They don't come to you. They just run around in random directions of attacking each other. So it acts as a DPS decrease using melee influence. The other thing I thought, well, okay, if influence is a bit janky, maybe I'll use toxic on the weapon and I'll make gas, because the toxic will mix with the heat pools and it'll make gas. But again, we go back to the pools just doing absolutely horrible amounts of damage, and the gas wasn't really doing anything for damage in Steel Path. Even starting Steel Path was completely garbage. So I was thinking, I'm like, okay, what can I do with these heat pools? Well, let's just leave them heat. Let's just leave them heat, right? Heat is at least a partial armor strip on enemies. That's still pretty decent, right? It's pretty decent. So that's what we're going with here. All right, let's go over the build now. We're going to start with Primed Reach for +3 range. The reason we use this on this weapon is because its base range is 1.25, which is really, really bad. It has an evolution that gives it 1 more range, and that'll get you up to a 2.25, which, if we were using an influence build, I think I would be okay with 2.25, because at least melee influence zaps dudes out to 18 meters. I think it's 18 meters, 16 or 18 meters. But we're not going for an influence build. So we're really only hitting enemies that are within our range, and 2.25 is not that great. So we're gonna go Primed Reach for another 3 on top of the 1.25 base, the 1 evolution, and that'll give us a total of 5 5.25. And it's also important to note, these are fist weapons, and fist weapons get a 90% follow through, which is amazing. So fist weapons actually benefit from hitting multiple targets with each hit. It's just that they normally can't because they have really bad range. And so we're able to get up to a 5.25 range, 90% follow through. That's really good there. We have Galvanized Steel next for critical chance, critical damage. Organ Shatter for critical damage. Gladiator Might for critical chance and critical damage. Condition Overload for flat damage per unique element on the target. Berserker Fury for 70% attack speed. Blood Rush for 440% crit chance. Weeping Wounds for 440% status chance. In the stance slot, we're going to be going for Seismic Palm. Now, I'm going to show another build after this that it's very similar. There's only 2 changes on it. But this build here, using Seismic Palm, is meant to be using the forward light and neutral light combos. The other build I'm going to be showcasing is going to be using the forward block combo with Gaia's Tragedy. So this one here is going to be using Seismic Palm, and you'll be using the forward light and neutral light on this. In the Tennokai slot, we go for Discipline's Merit. This enables Tennokai after 4 melee hits instead of at random. That's really good because it lets us do a heavy slam more often. For free, but remember, we still get 90% efficiency on heavy slams anyway. So even if you wanted to add some extra heavy slams in, you can even heavy slam out of Tennokai, and that's okay too. In the Arcane slot, we're going to be using Melee Exposure. This is going to give us 240% corrosive. We just have to have a Warframe that casts an ability every 25 seconds. That's not that big of an ask. Most Warframes are going to cast an ability every 25 seconds, but if for some reason you're playing a Warframe with really high duration or something that doesn't have to cast an ability, this might not be the build for you here. But I think most Warframes are going to be able to benefit from melee exposure. So the 240% corrosive is really nice because it's a combined element. It's not going to mess up those heat pools like all the other single elements were, where they were trying to mix with the heat. So this is not going to try to mix with the heat. And yeah, it works really well in conjunction with it, actually. And I just wanted to showcase another setup you could do with the Furax Wraith that is more slam oriented. So what we would do in this case is we would remove Primed Reach and we put Seismic Wave in its place. Seismic Wave is plus 200% slam attack damage. So that's going to increase the damage of your heavy slams that you're going to be doing when you get your Tennokai up, or if you want to do heavy slams outside of Tennokai as well, that's going to increase the damage of them. And what we're going to do now also is we're going to change Seismic Palm into Gaia's Tragedy. And that's because on Gaia's Tragedy specifically, its forward block attack has slams built into it. So not only is Seismic Wave going to be benefiting your heavy slams that you're doing through Tennokai or non-Tennokai heavy slams, but it's also going to be improving your regular attacking with Gaia's Tragedy. Just remember, if you're using the Gaia's Tragedy setup, you need to be using the forward block combo to actually get benefit. Now, this setup compared to the other one that we showed, I did kill per minute testing between the two. There was no real discernible differences. Actually, the Seismic Wave setup was slightly looking better than the Gaia's Tragedy setup, but I don't have a big sample size, so I can't say that for sure. If I was to do another 100 runs, they might be a bit different there. So not a big difference between the two. You can decide which of these two setups you want to run. Now let's go over the evolutions. The first evolution is that you've just unlocked it on the weapon. Congratulations. The second evolution is the one where we have a choice here. Now, one of these choices is probably the one you should pick because it's very powerful, and the other choice is the one I pick because I'm a bit weird, and I'll explain why I pick the one I pick, but you probably should pick the other one. So let's go over the other one first, is Killjoy. Killjoy increases your base damage by plus 55, and you get plus 10% attack speed per enemy within 6 meters, stacking up to 5 times. So that's 55 base damage and up to 50% attack speed. And then we have this other one here, Swordsman's Flourish. This increases your base damage by plus 65, so it's 10 more base damage than the other one. And with a melee weapon equipped, you get plus 100% combo count chance. I'm really using this just for the plus 65 base damage. So why do I pick Swordsman's Flourish? That's only plus 10 more base damage, and I don't get those that up to 50% attack speed? Well, it's because personally, I don't like fluctuations in my attack speed. I feel like it makes your Tennokai coming up a little bit more random. And that the whole point of using Discipline's Merit is that your Tennokai is not random. You can kind of guess when it's coming up. After every 4 attacks, you can, know to jump in the air and do your heavy slam. When you have fluctuations to your attack speed, where sometimes it's 10%, sometimes it's 50% more, you're attacking at different speeds, and you can't really prepare for your Tennokai to come up like you usually can. That's my explanation for why I use Swordsman's Flourish, but looking just at the stats, I mean, Killjoy is a lot stronger. So I would say use Killjoy over Swordsman's Flourish, but if you're like me and you don't like the fluctuations in attack speed, then you can do what I do and use Swordsman's Flourish. All right, third evolution here. So I'm going to be going for Moonrise Velocity, which is +1 range. This is the one you probably should go with, although if you're going to go with the slam focused setup that we showed, range is less useful there. And so with a slam oriented setup, you could, pick these other 2 options here. But if you're going to go for the first setup that we showcased using Seismic Palm, you definitely should use Moonrise Velocity. Now, the other 2 options are Overhand, which increases your base heavy attack efficiency, or it sets it at 20%. And Standoff, your combo timer pauses when the weapon is holstered. Standoff is a best-in-slot evolution for niche builds. Some builds are hybrid builds, and they want to frequently switch between their ranged weapons and their melee weapons, and they want to have the ability to pause their combo counter. And so Standoff is a best-in-slot evolution for those specific niche Warframe builds. So if you're playing one of those builds, you might want to pick Standoff then over the other ones. Otherwise, you'd probably pick Moonrise Velocity, likely in both situations, even if you're using the slam-oriented build. But if you're using the slam-oriented build, you have, maybe more of a incentive to pick Overhand instead, but that's really up to you. I'm picking Moonrise Velocity. In the 4th evolution here, we're going to be going for Absolute Dominion. This increases your base status chance by +14%. I did a lot of math this morning between Absolute Dominion and this next one here, which is Flashing Bleed. So Flashing Bleed is +40% chance of a slash status on an impact status effect. Okay, but you have to think, this is not just a 40% chance to do a slash. This is a 40% chance to do a slash when you get an impact status effect. And there's a % chance to do the impact as well. And when I did the math this morning, it's about 20%. So like 1 in 5 attacks is going to do a slash status, which I didn't feel like that was good enough. I would rather just have the consistent more status chance out of Absolute Dominion. So that's the one I picked. The other one here, Kinetic Killer, this increases your base critical damage multiplier to 4 times on slide attacks. You should be incorporating slide attacks into your normal combos, but I still don't feel like almost any weapon incorporates them enough to pick this evolution. So I just think that you do slide attacks too infrequently for you to get a lot of value out of Kinetic Killer. So Absolute Dominion will be the 4th evolution we're picking. This is how you build out the melee weapon, the Furax Wraith Incarnon. I hope you guys liked it, and if you did, consider leaving a like and subscribing for future content. So now we'll have a 5-minute gameplay portion showcasing the weapon, and when that's done, we'll come back to the orbiter and we'll give it our final thoughts. So I'll see you guys again after the gameplay. Alrighty, we're about to start this 5-minute gameplay portion up here. The only thing I'm going to do differently in this setup is because this is an exposure build, I have to press an ability once every 25 seconds. Most Warframes are going to have an ability they have to press once every 25 seconds. I must have been doing something, but I have Ash's shurikens subsumed on my Anaros. So I'm going to throw out one of these things like once every 25 seconds just to keep exposure up. It shouldn't affect the gameplay much. My Anaros is not like built out for strength or anything. Make sure exposure is stacked up to start off with though. Remember to try to turn your Tennokais into heavy slams. You're getting stuck on things, of course. Now, if you know me, I always do the old man fat fingers where I Tennokai, you know, out of Tennokai, and I lose all my heavy combo. On this weapon, you don't have to worry too much about that because you have so much heavy, or not heavy attack efficiency, but heavy slam efficiency, I think, where you're not really going to be losing much by doing it. So even if you want to slam outside of Tennokai, you can do that as well. So with Seismic Palm, you're just going to be basically spamming the forward light. And if you decide to go with Gaia's Tragedy, you're going to be spamming the forward block. So that'll be depending on if you want to go for the more slam-oriented setup. This is the less slam-oriented setup, but I'm obviously slamming a lot anyway, because you're converting your Tennokais into heavy slams. About 2 minutes left. You know, for my little spamming ability that I could use for melee exposure, I probably could have just left on Anaros's one. Although I've had Shuriken on him for a while. I don't know what I was doing where I had Shuriken on him. I shouldn't say the spamming ability, right? You only got to press it once every 25 seconds. But the ability, I'm pressing once every 25. For a lot of melee builds, that'll be like Wrathful Advance, right? Wrathful Advance, I think base is like 15 seconds. Even if you add duration to it, it's not going to get much more. It's going to be like 20 or 20 something. So most melee builds will have you know, an easy thing to press. All right, we have the Acolyte coming. This should be really good against the Acolyte. He's gone. Oh, I did a regular heavy there. I lost all my combo. I did the old man fat fingers, except I did a regular heavy. Damn it, Salt. All right, so that's 5 minutes. Let's kill these Thraxes. All right, and that is 446 in 5. Pretty good. Let's head back to the Orbiter now. Welcome back to the Orbiter, guys. So let's give our final thoughts on the Furax Wraith Incarnon. It's a powerful melee weapon that has multiple powerful utility effects. The first and most obvious one would be the Amalgam mod that it gets that gives plus 45% fire rate to secondary weapons. That makes this weapon the best in slot melee weapon for Warframes that use secondaries as their primary damage source. Something I didn't mention that I want to mention now is our 2 builds that we showcased today were maximum melee damage builds. But if you wanted to go for more of like a hybrid setup where you actually are switching between like your melee and your secondary and you still want to have a strong melee weapon, well, where do you put that amalgam mod? You put it over the Organ Shatter slot. Organ Shatter is your flex slot. You take that off, pop your amalgam in there, and now you have a strong melee weapon and you get the 45% fire rate on your secondary weapons as well. You could also consider Organ Shatter your Riven slot too. That's just your general flex slot to put any other kind of changes or mods you want on it. The other unique thing to the Furax Wraith Incarnon is that its 3rd evolution, you get the choice to pick that one where it pauses your combo timer. That's really good on hybrid builds where they want to switch between their ranged weapons and their melee weapons. There are a few weapons in the game that have that same effect, so this is not the only one that has it. But I would say it's one of the stronger ones that have that effect. I wouldn't say it's the strongest, but it's one of the stronger ones that have that effect. Now, my only gripe with this weapon is I really wish those pools, those heat pools that were left behind from heavy slams did a bit more damage. Because when I was testing this weapon this morning, I did an entire like meme build where I was just trying to maximize the damage of those heat pools, and they were still absolute doo-doo tier for damage. I even had like Elementalist on there and things, and it was still complete doo-doo tier. So that's my one gripe. I wish those heat pools did a little bit more damage. So that's my take on the weapon. Tell me what you guys think. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. All right, bye.